Hello, everybody. I'm Joseph Khateri, licensed realtor in the state of Virginia and Section 8 investor. And today I'm going to give you the raw, honest truth about Section 8. The pros, the cons, no fluff, no sugarcoating. I'm going to be talking about stuff that the gurus won't talk about. Most people think about Section 8 and just imagine destroyed homes or constant drama. Others think it's a gold mine. The truth? It's both, depending on how you do it. Now, this video is long and mostly unedited because I want to give you real value, real details, so by the end, you'll either be ready to dive in or you'll realize this isn't for you. All right, let's get into it. So I thought the best way to go about this was going to just be a gamma presentation. If you see me look over here a bunch, it's because my full notes are over here. So the pros and cons of Section 8 investing, let's get into it. The first thing has got to be the guaranteed rent. So when you rent to a Section 8 tenant, the government pays most or sometimes all of the rent. So even if they lose their job, get sick, or something crazy happens, you'll still get paid. For example, during COVID, thousands of landlords had tenants stop paying, but for Section 8, they got paid every single month. Direct deposit, on time. I didn't personally experience this because I was a minor, but I know that tons of gurus out there talk about it. So that kind of reliability gives you peace of mind. It also makes your entire business more predictable. So when you know rent's coming in on time every single month, you can plan for maintenance, reinvest profits, or take on more properties without stressing about cash flow. I've literally had tenants who have lost their jobs or had, debts in the family, and the rent kept coming in like nothing happened. That's the kind of stability that allows you to scale fast. So you're not just getting rent, you're getting peace of mind, and that's what makes this huge. I had a tenant with a regular property who I believe their child got sick and they had to leave because they couldn't afford the rent anymore. I think we gave them like 2 months for free and then they just couldn't. They had to leave. But with Section 8, if that exact scenario happened, I would have been getting paid like nothing had happened at all. There is also long-term tenants, which reduces the turnover. So what most people don't realize is that Section 8 tenants don't move often. Why? Because it's hard for them to even find landlords who will accept them in the first place. So once they're in a home that they like and the landlord is not scummy, they stay. So this means less vacancy, less turnover, and fewer repairs between the tenants. Each time a tenant moves out, you're looking at cleaning, repainting, marketing, screening again. All of that costs time and money. But with Section 8, many of the tenants stay 5 years to 7 years. In fact, I think the national average is 6 for Section 8. They want stability. They want to avoid the paperwork. They want to avoid the stress of moving, of hunting down properties again, when only maybe 10% of the homes in their market accept Section 8. And as a landlord, this is good for you because long-term tenants mean consistent income and less work for you. The third pro is that there are more leads than you usually can handle. So when you list a home as Section 8 accepted and get it ready for rent, your phone's going to explode, especially if you contact the housing authority and tell them that you have a property ready for market. A lot of the times we'll get 10 to 20 applications weekly. If it is a hot area, that is, and I know the hot areas. So if you're interested in learning what those are, become one of my students, join my mentorship, link in the description. But in one case, this was, I think, our third property ever. We listed a duplex and I think we had 60 within a week. So that means you can as a landlord be picky with who you choose. You don't have to take the first person who calls, which I know is how it is with a lot of different rentals out there. But you get to choose who is going to be the best fit, which I think is great. Now, granted, it might be a little bit hard to vet them. If you are a beginner, if you're a student, it's going to be easy because I know what I'm doing. But an example is you don't look at credit scores when you're vetting these because no one has a good credit score. I'm sorry, even regular tenants a lot of the times don't have good credit scores. So I don't think credit's a good indicator for Section 8 applicants. What I typically look for is I always look for their history. I am grateful enough that most of the time, these applicants that I'm interested in already live in either apartments or homes managed by a property manager. So I can simply call them and ask, hey, what is the payment history of this tenant and how many work orders have they submitted? That gives me a pretty good indication as to what kind of tenant they are. Now, if they do not have this option, if you don't have this option, then what I like to do is do an at-home interview. And in fact, you could probably do this either way, where you either go out or have someone go out, maybe a handyman, go to their home and say, hey, we would just like to do an at-home interview. And that way you can check out their car. If their car is filthy, that's a bad sign. How they treat their car is how they treat your house. Now, if it's just old and rusted, that's not a problem. Same with their home. If it has just, old foundation, it's just an older home, then that's not a problem. That's not their fault. But if there's holes in the drywall, ceiling fans are broken, cracked TV screens, then yes, that is a red flag. And in general, in my experience, anyone that rejects an at-home interview is probably not a good applicant. So in general, this means that you are rarely sitting on vacant units. So even if one tenant moves out, you're likely to have a waiting list of other voucher applicants to choose from. So this is really, really strong in slower markets where landlords are struggling to fill in units, because even in slow markets, it's going to seem like an average amount of applicants. It's not going to seem like, oh, you have to pick the first one or else you're going to go homeless. And there's also premium rental rates. So you heard that right. Section 8 usually pays more than what a regular tenant would pay free market. This is because HUD has a system called the Fair Market Rent, FMRs. You've heard me talk about them, where in many areas, it's above market value. So you might get $1,400 a month for a house that would only get $1,000 a month with a regular tenant. And you can request rent increases every single year. I've done it before, I've won. However, if I'm being honest, here's a big tip. Build a relationship with the housing authority, because when they know that you maintain your properties and follow the rules, they're more likely to approve your rent increases. You can request them once a year. However, they have the right to deny them. Keep that in mind. They can definitely deny them for sure. And that has also happened. So you better be prepared to justify the rent increase that you ask for. Typically, I ask for about 3%, maybe 5% of an increase. And I have comps to back it up. I show up, I email them, and I say, here is 5 other properties in our zip code that is renting for the amount that I'm asking for. I believe it's justified. So at that point, then you kind of have a little bit of leg room to speak on asking for these rent increases. And remember, HUD pays based on the bedrooms and the zip code. Or at least that is the maximum they'll pay. They're not going to change it based on if you have a granite countertop or not. So this also means that you can get high rent in areas most landlords wouldn't even look at. For example, these C-class neighborhoods that I'm talking about. Now, no, you can't just list it for exactly what you see on the FMR website. That is not how it works. However, you'll generally notice that Section 8 accepted homes are renting for a little bit higher, about 20% more than what is average on the market. Now, I already talked about the high returns. 24% yield is possible in affordable areas. Admittedly, I think the 24% is probably exaggerated that I put down. We aim for 15, and I think 15 is definitely like a no BS, no fluff answer. And it's very realistic. In fact, most of my students are hitting 15% right now. I think the latest deal we just did is 19%. But the second thing is you can just do basic renovations. So you want to focus on function, not luxury. What do I mean by that? You should go for the stainless steel appliances, but you don't need the granite countertops. You don't need the fancy landscaping. So most Section 8 tenants just want a clean, safe, functional home. That is what they want. So your rehab budget can be pretty low. All you really want to do is pass the inspection. You're not competing with these luxury rentals. All you need is to pass the inspection and to make sure that you are putting in rehab and general maintenance that is going to last a lifetime. That's why I mentioned, go for the stainless steel. They tend to last a very long time. And they kind of boost the look of the place with almost no money change. I don't know if you guys realized, but like a $100 more dishwasher sorry, a $100 more fridge heavily boosts the potential rental income you can make. People don't realize this, but the kitchen is the most looked at place when you're touring a home. So get those stainless steel appliances. I swear you're going to be able to rent it for $100 more a month. And guess what? Those stainless steel appliances are usually only like $50 more each, $100 more each. And they usually last like double the length of time. Now, a pro tip, do not get the appliances that have technology in them. I know that sounds weird. I know, right? I'm not saying it because it's expensive. I'm saying it because it is impossible to fix. And this is something that actually happened to my parents, not to a tenant, but they have these fancy wall ovens built into their wall, right? Because they have some fancy like new construction house. These things cost broke one time just because the buttons didn't click correctly. That was the only issue, and it kept throwing an error code. $1,300. $1,300 to fix buttons on an oven. That's insane. I'm sorry, that is insane. It would have been the exact same price to replace the entire ovens. The same applies to fridges. The same applies to microwaves. It applies to everything. Get as little technology as possible. Doorbells. Go for the physical doorbells. Don't go for the ring ones. Same with what is it called? Thermostats. Don't go for the fancy Nest ones. Go for the ones that need AA batteries. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent right now. I've rented homes with older cabinets, basic paint, vinyl floors. Go for vinyl every time. This is another tangent. But vinyl, a luxury vinyl plank, lasts on average 20 to 25 years. Carpet only lasts 5 to 10. And guess what? Vinyl's double the price, but lasts 4 times as long. Come on, the math is easy on that one. Plus, it's waterproof. If you have a burst pipe, you might actually save your flooring, whereas carpet is a guaranteed garbage. Oh, also, cleaning vinyl, super easy. Just get a mop. With washing carpets, you need an entire industrial machine, and sometimes that doesn't even work. And also, pets, the most you'll get on vinyl is scratches, instead of the carpet coming off of the ground. So go for vinyl every single time, unless the carpet is in pristine condition. If the carpet's at the end of its life, or even like in the middle of its life, we still typically replace it with vinyl. Going on a tangent again, but my point is, go for these basic renovations, and you'll pass the inspection just fine, while making the home look premium, but only including these really basic stainless steel appliances, vinyl plank. You should focus on passing the HUD HQS inspection, Housing Quality Standards inspection, not going on some, rehabbing reality TV show. And the opposite is true from what I said. Or maybe you're reading between the lines. I am saying only include stuff to pass the inspection. If there's stuff like screen doors, ceiling fans, garages in the backyard, get rid of them. They are just going to cost you more money down the line. Because if that ceiling fan breaks and it was originally included in the lease, you are now responsible to fix it. But guess what? If it was never there, the tenant does not know nor care. I'm not saying be a slumlord. I'm not saying that. I'm saying provide the basics, but make those basics high quality. Now, the last pro that I have is you can buy these in dirt cheap areas. Whoops. The device overheated. That is embarrassing. Okay, embarrassingly enough, my camera just overheated because I've been recording for a while. So we're going off the webcam right now. Where was I? Yes, number 6. The last pro, which is that you can buy in dirt cheap areas. So you can invest in these homes that are 75K to 100K with strong cash flow that are going to make your numbers phenomenal. You're often going to pass the 1.5 times rule. So in a regular market, people wouldn't even look at these zip codes that have 75K homes in them. But for Section 8, the rent is locked based on the bedroom count and area typically. Now, yes, you advertise at a different price, but I'm going off FMRs for a second here. It's not based on whether the home has granite in it or not. or a Starbucks nearby. Now, funny enough about Starbucks, there's actually a rule with real estate, which is you know an area is good when there's a Starbucks within a few miles. That I actually like that rule of thumb, and I still use it to this day. But going off, that's beside the point. Um, these areas that are typically around 100K, that's where you find these insane cash flow deals. And let me give you an example. So we bought a home that was in a war zone for $48,000. Spent another 12,000 fixing it up, so that's 60K all in. Section 8 approved it for 1,200 bucks a month, which is a 24% gross yield. Now, you can't find that with a regular tenant. Now, yes, it wasn't 24% like in net. It ended up being like 19% after all expenses. Hi, kitty. Ooh, she does not want to be on my lap. This is Luna. She overheated my camera. Mwah. Look at her. She's adorable. All right. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying go buy in a war zone. In fact, we bought in the war zone because we didn't know any better at the time. It thankfully worked out, but that was a pretty high risk that I could have avoided altogether. But because the housing authority makes us reinspect the home every year, you're forced to keep it in decent shape, which also helps keep its long-term value. So you're turning rough properties into cash flowing assets. And that's how you build wealth with Section 8. I mean, again, like I said, you're getting on the low end, I say 15% ROI. You can't get that with any other strategy. I mean, high yield savings accounts are at 4%. Some bonds and CDs are at like 4.5, maybe 5% if you're lucky. The S&P 500 has averaged 10% over the last 30 years. We're hitting 15. Consistently on the low end, we're hitting 15. So again, if you're interested in this, want some mentorship, click the first link in the description, just saying. I offer one-on-one mentorship. That's not a joke. I actually do offer one-on-one mentorship. Click the first link in the description if you're interested. Book a call with my team for free to see if this is a right fit for you. You can also click the second link in the description. That'll lead you to a free program that I actually just launched on Skool, Skool. It includes a series of videos that is a step-by-step Section 8 investing guide for free, completely for free, as well as a chat feature so you can chat with fellow investors. And I also do monthly group calls where I will answer all on a live stream, live Q&A questions that you guys have, you guys can ask me, and generally go through the entire process. Again, all for free. There's no harm in joining it. Go do it right now. Okay, let's go to the cons because let's flip the coin. It's not all perfect. And if you're not ready for these challenges, it can wreck your entire investment strategy and leave a bad taste in your mouth. Number one, nightmare tenants exist. They are a real thing. So some tenants are incredible, clean, respectful, great communicators, but others not so much. So I've had tenants break leases, trash homes, ghost communication completely, just like market tenants. So this is also a point I want to make. All tenants do this, not just Section 8. All tenants do this. 2 years ago, I had a tenant straight up abandon the property for 4 months. This was a regular tenant in a high priced rental. I think it was like $3,000 a month, which in my area is a lot. It was for like a 5-bedroom single family home. And they just disappeared for like 4 months. They stopped paying rent, stopped communicating, and then boom, out of nowhere, they like showed up for like 2 days and then ended up bursting a pipe in the wall. Didn't tell us because, again, they left again. And then we found out 3 days later when the neighbor called us complaining, and it costed us $22,000 to fix. That was with a regular tenant in a high-priced area. These things happen to all tenants. But with Section 8 specifically, going back to the cons, you can't screen income. That's already handled. What you can do is screen background, eviction history, and references. So the risk is that Section 8 tenants know that once they're in, it's hard to get evicted unless they break major rules. Some people abuse that. Now, this is where you come in because what you can do is snitch. It's not unethical if it saves you money. So, what you can do is if you have clear proof that a Section 8 tenant is breaking the lease, snitch. Call the housing authority, provide the proof, and say you need to warn them or I'm going to start the eviction process. So, for example, a tenant is on the, let's say, 6th day of not paying rent, which in the state of Virginia, after 5 days, it is no longer in the grace period. 6th day late. Then you can tell them, John Smith has not paid. It is 6 days overdue. I'm going to start the eviction process on the 10th day. Housing authority will immediately call the tenant and get it situated because they know, and they're going to warn the tenant, hey, if you don't pay Joseph Khateri before the 10th day, you will be evicted and you will permanently be banned from the Section 8 program. Do you know how crazy that is to be permanently banned from this program? Some people wait 2 years to get a voucher. So as soon as the housing authority warns them, they straighten up 9 times out of 10. The other 1 time out of 10, 50% of that time, you can do cash for keys, which is you kind of man-to-man ask the tenant, hey, I know you're going through a rough time. I get that, but I'm also going through a rough time. I need this property, getting rent so that I can pay my son Johnny's medical bills. How about we do this deal? If you leave by the 10th day, completely vacate the property, don't do any more damage. Whatever damage you've done, leave it. I'll do an inspection today. If you don't do any more damage, I will give the full security deposit back and I will give you $500 so you can stay in a motel for a few days. But that is if you leave on the 10th, and I will give it to you in cash. Most of the time they'll leave because they know that if they don't do that, they're getting served an eviction and it's going to suck for them. And they're probably going to get blacklisted from the program. At least this way, it's kind of peaceful on both sides. I mean, you're losing some money, but more often than not, it beats waiting 3 months for an eviction. And then that 1 time out of like 20, yes, you will have an eviction. It sucks, but it's kind of the name of the game. It just happens. And it happens with regular rentals too. So we've also had tenants who stop communicating the day after move-in. And then when they cause damage, they call HUD and complain about us. So the good news with this part is that you can prevent most of it by having airtight screening, setting expectations in writing, and doing regular walkthroughs. So for example, our lease, let's say we're talking about broken windows here. I have a window addendum that strictly says that any broken windows are the responsibility of the tenant for any reason. Because I'm not going to have them not find their key at midnight, break a window while drunk to get into the property, and then call me to fix it the next day. That's not happening. The window addendum clearly states that they are responsible because windows are expensive. I got quoted like 30 grand to replace all my windows in my house. They're very expensive. But if you get lazy and don't do these things, or you're not a student of mine and don't know what addendums to include, then you're going to lose a lot of money. So either don't be lazy or become a student of mine. The second con is that onboarding takes time. That is 100% valid. When you first list a unit, don't expect rent within a week, right? You'll have to go through a few steps. You'll have to go through paperwork, then you'll have to wait on an inspector. Then the housing authority has to process your file. That can take 30 to 60 days, sometimes more. For example, the city of Cleveland, last I checked, which admittedly is a while ago at this point, probably 5 months ago, they probably are different now. But when I called in December of 2024, they directly told me, hey, it'll take like 2 to 3 months just to get the inspector out there. That is excluding paperwork processing time. I was in shock, but they were like, yeah, we're super backed up. Holiday season. So always call the housing authority beforehand to see how long processing times are. Because some are long as hell. I'm not going to lie to you. But one simple phone call can typically avoid this messy scenario. And yes, during that time, you're going to have to be paying your mortgage, your utilities, your taxes, all with zero cash flowing income. Now, does this matter a whole lot when you have 30 properties? No. But when you only have less than 5, yeah, it matters a lot more and it's going to leave a bad taste in your mouth. The system's slow and some housing authorities are worse than others. So you might submit a form and not hear back for 2 weeks. That definitely happens, which is why, again, call the housing authorities beforehand. So if you're tight on cash or expecting instant results, Section 8 will frustrate you very quickly. You need to have holding costs built into your budget, vacancy costs. I have it built into all of my budgets when I'm doing my spreadsheets. And if you don't, you're going to be bleeding money that you didn't think you needed. The third con, yearly inspections. They are very strict. So you better make sure that your doorknobs are on tight, the smoke alarms work, and there are no leaks because the inspector will check. They're trained to look at every little thing. And I have failed inspections for the most absurd things before. One time, a bathroom door did not latch properly, failed. Another time, there was a tiny crack in a kitchen tile on the ground, failed. Now, granted, in both of these scenarios, they told me that I had, 7 days to fix it, and I could just email a picture of it replaced as well as any type of invoice I had, and that would be fine, and it worked out fine. But if it was a bigger thing like HVAC, then I would have had to go through the entire process again from the beginning, meaning it could have been another 2 months for an inspector to go out there. HUD inspects your properties based on the HQS, the Housing Quality Standards. If you don't meet every single item, they can delay or stop your payments. And the worst part is each failed inspection costs you time, like I just mentioned. This means that if a tenant loves a home, you don't get paid until it passes the inspection. Now, what do you do about this? Well, you do a mock inspection. There are a total of, after the initial, 3 inspections in my books every single year. One of them is 6 months into the lease, where we again take the checklist and do a full inspection. We're not, half-assing anything. We're doing a full HQS inspection using our own using our own checklists. Then, 2 weeks before the official inspection, we do the same thing. Exact same thing. Like clockwork. We don't like surprises here. That way, at least if something comes up that's kind of big, we have 2 weeks to remedy it before the official. And then the official inspection comes around, and we like to give a little bonus, right? We don't do this to every single tenant, but if the tenant passes the HQS inspection, first try, no issues found, then they get 10% off of their portion of the rent. Not the total gross rent, but just their portion. If their portion is $300, they get $30 off. This will save you so much potential mistakes that happen. Now, granted, you could also have my custom checklist, which I give to all of my mentorship students. But regardless, the HQS general inspection is available online. I just realized I have not moved this slideshow in quite a while. That is my bad. We're right here. We're at annual inspections. I'm so sorry. This was the previous slide. Here's a picture of an old man looking at a piece of paper. I don't know. Sorry. My fault. Oh, and by the way, if you're wondering, who does these inspections? Well, your property manager can do it. They can usually just charge an hour or 2 of their time. Or if you don't have a property manager and you're managing it yourself, you can have an inspector go out and do an investor inspection, which is typically half the price of an actual home inspection. But if you even think that's too much money, then you can just have a handyman go out, because ultimately, a handyman will know everything. You can just go on TaskRabbit or ask the realtor I recommend or you find to refer you to a handyman. They're always going to have one. I have like 3 on speed dial. And yes, the HQS doesn't go into insane details, right? It's saying, are there leaks? Does the heating work? Is there any tripping hazards? Like, a handyman's going to be able to know all of it. And then the last thing on this slide, emergency inspections. Tenants can call HUD at any time, and they can say, hey, something is broken. And boom, an inspector will show up with no notice at all. If they find serious issues, they will pause your payments until it's fixed, which sucks a lot. But again, if you're maintaining your properties like a real business, this is not a problem. I've had tenants call HUD because of stupid stuff that, in my opinion, was just a waste of everybody's time, like light switches didn't work. HUD came out within a few days, and I literally had, this was a long time ago, but when that happened, I just had a handyman literally go out to the property with the inspector, fix it on the spot, and the inspector just approved it and went home. But if the issue is minor, they still have to go through the whole checklist. So if anything else is off, you'll be flagged. However, if it's something bigger, let's say that it is winter and the heating doesn't work. They call, do an emergency inspection. This is something that you should actually, as a landlord, take seriously because it is literally like, I mean, come on, it's common sense. It's heat in the middle of winter. Like they need it. So the inspector is going to come out and say, you have 24 hours to fix this or else we pause your payments. Or they'll give you just a general time frame, 7 days, 5 days, 24 hours. And then you have to get someone out there to fix it as soon as possible because they legitimately pause the payments. So if they say you have 24 hours, but it takes you a week, you're missing out on 6 days of payment, which sucks a lot. Now, granted, it kind of makes sense, right? They need heating. It makes sense, but it still is in a very uncomfortable scenario for you as a landlord. Now, thankfully, you are going to be able to have. Now, granted, you're going to have these contractors you can easily dial because of your realtor connection, hopefully as one of my students. But regardless, you are going to have contractors you can call. But depending on their availability, maybe it takes a while. Okay, management. Most property managers hate Section 8. Why? Extra paperwork, dealing with government offices, and the myth that all tenants suck with Section 8. They think it's not worth the hassle. And the truth is, it is more work up front. I'm not going to lie about that. You got to work with housing authorities. You got to coordinate inspections. You have to answer more tenant questions typically. But the right property manager will stick with you for years and help you scale. Because good property managers also know that Section 8 rentals typically rent for about 20% higher, which means they get a bigger cut, if you know what I mean. The hard part's finding them. Because you need to interview, I'd say on average, we interview 5 to 10 managers in most cities before finding one that is both familiar with Section 8, has the availability, and is actually on top of their stuff. I don't want to wait 3 weeks for someone to just do a spot inspection. And yes, you will probably have to train them a bit. You're going to have to show them how you do things, how to submit paperwork, how to prep for inspections. And again, this is if they are inexperienced or you're doing it yourself. But once you have a system built, it runs like a machine, and you hopefully only have to do it once. Because I always recommend for you to buy at least 10 properties in the initial city you pick. That way, again, you don't have to interview multiple contractors, multiple property inspectors, multiple realtors. You just get one for a big bundle of houses before you move on to the next place. So just don't expect this to be able to be handed off that easily. You need to be involved pretty early on. Decently. It's going to be a part-time job while you're buying the house and probably for the first, I want to say 2 to 3 weeks while you're rehabbing / getting property management in there. But afterwards, it is very passive. And if you do end up choosing to manage it yourself, that's not a huge deal. I'd say for half the properties, we manage it ourselves. The other half, we have managers. And by the end of 2025, I'm planning to fire all of them and manage it all myself. Because I have good enough systems in place that I honestly think I could do an equivalent job, only sacrificing about 5 hours for every single house, or in total for all of the houses that we have. There are also property management software online that you can just use. I personally have not really used them yet. We typically go through Zillow, and I know this is weird. We go through the Zillow property management in order to manage and collect rent. But I have used Rent Spree in the past in order to do background checks. But we are trying to find a better software that isn't going to break the bank. I know that there's some softwares like, Tenant Cloud. I know that this is very popular. I have never used this, but I also know it's very cheap. Let's see. Yep, $16.50 a month, and it has most of what the average landlord needs, which is collecting rent, maintenance, and listings and applications for $16.50 a month. So that's fantastic. Most property managers will charge $130 a month on average, I want to say, and they'll take the first month of rent. So now granted, I've never used this software. I have no idea if it sucks or not. But my point is, you can either have management and hire them, and it's like 8 to 12% annually, or 8 to 12% of your gross rent. You'll never have to think about the property. Or you can do it yourself for a handful of hours a month and save a few $100. And the sixth and final con, which kind of falls into some of this management, is that there's a lot of housing authority red tape, aka bureaucracy. So housing authorities are understaffed, overwhelmed, and inconsistent. You might submit the same rent increase paperwork to do 2 different offices. One gets back to you in 3 days and one takes 3 weeks. Sometimes caseworkers just disappear mid-process, aka they got fired or laid off or PTO. And you'll have to resubmit everything to a different person and it restarts the whole process. So other times you'll have to call and leave 4 voicemails before anyone responds. So this isn't a quick, efficient system. It's the government. You need to have patience, follow-up skills, and a paper trail for everything, because if it's not documented, it did not happen. I like to spam email them. That's always a good way to go. So spam email them until you get to a caseworker. And then if they don't respond within a handful of days, call them, stay on the line. It'll be like a 2-hour hold, and just say, hey, I emailed. Look at my email right now. That works. Or if you're close to the offices, show up with a box of donuts. I actually recommend that for inspectors as well. For every single inspection, show up with a box of donuts to give them and a coffee, or have your property manager or handyman do that. Back to this camera, it stopped overheating. So, time to wrap up. Here is what you have learned thus far. Section 8 investing gives you guaranteed rent, long-term tenants, and a higher income potential. You can buy in cheap areas and still make an insane cash flow, way more than regular rentals, and it also has a lower barrier to entry, usually about 1/4 the amount of cash you would need for a regular rental. There are headaches too. The cons, strict inspections, potential bad tenants, but that kind of applies to any property, and a lot more red tape. Me, I still invest in Section 8, even though Trump has made a lot of announcements about what can or might not happen about Section 8. I'm still doubling down, and I've made other videos about that. Why am I doubling down? Because I've learned how to make it work the right way. And now I teach it to others too. If you want step-by-step help with this, from picking the right city to screening tenants to maximizing your rent, once again, click the first link in the description. I built a mentorship program where I help you one-on-one, meaning I don't accept that many people because you guys are taking up my time. No fluff, no theory, just what exactly works. You can also click the second link in the description to join my free program where I have a huge step-by-step guide on how to invest in Section 8 and to join a community of fellow investors, chat with them, as well as join monthly group Q&As. You can directly ask me questions in a group call. And if this video helped you, even a little, hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment on what you think and what you learned from this video. Let me know what surprised you the most. Thanks for watching. As always, I am Joseph Khateri, and have a nice day.